Hello, thank you for joining. Hello, thanks for joining me on the Andyland mid-afternoon show. My name is Andrew Christian. Today, my guest is gonna be Emmy. She's my good friend. So come please have a seat.
Hi everyone. Thank you.
This is Emmy.
Hi, I'm Emmy. Like the Emmy Awards.
Before I kind of go over my credentials, I'd like to ask you, what are your credentials
My
for
credentials.
Reviewing the movie today? Talking about the movie today.
Well, first things first, I'm black. And second thing is, I don't know. I don't think I have any special credentials. I mean, I'm just another person who is a Christian, and I feel like that's enough. That's enough credentials.
Okay. Well, my credentials are Father of the Year, Husband of the Year, Child of the Year. Recently, I've become the Mechanic of the Year. So go ahead, head over to my website, www.prpbooks.com, and pick up my book, How to Overcome Evil. It's very relevant in today's conversation. So thank you for joining us again on the mid-afternoon show. The movie that we are going to be talking about today, I watched it yesterday. It's called Menace to Society. So what did you think?
All right, so the movie started, and at first I was like, all right, this is going to be what I think it will be, and it did not fail. The first scene was them going into what was it, like what would I call this? Like just like
Convenience store.
Like a convenience store. It wasn't even a gas station, just like a convenience store. And they walk in, they're buying beer, and they're like teenagers. They're like 18, and they're buying beer. And then after that,
they're in high school. He
they're in
graduates high school later in the movie.
Okay, all right. So they're children, and they're buying beer. And then one of the kids decides to shoot the cashier guy, right? And so that was the first thing that I was like, and he didn't stop shooting, which was scary. I was like, he's dead. Like, you can stop shooting. And he didn't stop. Why are you laughing? It was horrible. I was eating cucumbers and guacamole, and I took one more bite, and then I had to stop. I had to stop eating because I was then hooked.
Stop laughing, dude. This is a serious movie. This is gonna be bad. Dude. She had to stop eating her cucumbers and guacamole. That's crazy, bro. That's how good this movie is. Go watch the movie. So I'm gonna give a quick rundown just so the viewers have kind of what the movie is about. It's basically about this boy Kane. He lives in Compton off of Crenshaw Street.
No, he doesn't. He lives in Watts.
Watts?
Yeah. You know what? Just keep going. I thought
Whatever.
he did.
Off Crenshaw. Is that Watts or Compton?
I don't know.
I don't know. He lives off Crenshaw. I just saw that. So, as we just talked about the opening scene, we had Kane and then his best friend O-Dog, who's later, his name is Kevin, I believe. They go into the store, this convenience store, and they get some beer. They go up to the counter, and the cashier guy is like, just leave, I don't want any trouble, because they're obviously troublemakers, and he gets offended and unloads a clip basically into the guy. He's dead. And then he sees that they have security cameras, goes in the back, and then the guy, his mom or his wife, is trying to find the tape for O-Dog, and O-Dog, we hear him unload a clip into her as well, and then they leave. So that scene is really important for the whole movie because it kind of sets up the movie as well as is referenced throughout the movie. So, so Kane, his dad was a drug dealer. We find out his mom was a drug addict. They both end up dying. His dad died when he was 10 years old. He got murdered in a drug
drug deal.
Deal. That's right. Let's see. So after the murder in the convenience store, we see his love interest throughout the movie, which is Ronnie. She has a son with one of Kane's old friends, and he kind of likes the kid and tries to give her money and all that stuff, so that's one of the good parts. We find out that Kane is also a drug dealer, and lives with his grandparents. Let's see. So he graduates high school, and he goes to a house party after he graduates, and we meet a bunch of his friends. We find out that O-Dog kept the tape of the murders. He has the tape, and he's showing it to his friends. He's like really proud of this basically double murder that he committed. And everyone's like, oh, that's so crazy, that's so cool. They're laughing at it and stuff. After the party, they leave and they're going to another location. Kane's in the car with one of his other friends, and they get carjacked. These guys pull up, and they're like, give us the car, get out of the car. They got guns in their face and stuff. And they end up killing Kane's friend, stealing the car, and then shooting Kane. And Kane goes to the hospital, and he's in the hospital for a while. Goes back home to his grandparents, and we find out his grandpa is kind of a Christian-y guy. He's kind of like the good influence in his life, sorta, and tries to tell him, like, listen, killing people is wrong, dealing drugs is wrong and stuff, but he obviously doesn't listen. And his grandpa asks him, do you care if you die? I remember he asked him that at the end of the scene, and he goes, no, I don't care if I die. Like, I basically don't. So,
well, I think he said something of, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I don't... Yeah. I don't know. Yep, basically. And he says, I don't think God cares about us, otherwise he wouldn't have us here. And so that's kind of his stance on God as well. So that kind of shows that him, as well as his friends, the people that he's around, don't care about their lives. They don't care about their own lives, or obviously people's lives around them, because they're basically, disposable. So O-Dog figures out the guys who jacked Kane and shot Kane, and they go searching for them on this night. And so they find them, and they basically go and they kill him. So that's something that happens. Let's see.
It was also the first time that Kane had ever
killed someone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'm remembering how bad the movie is.
Yeah.
So Kane goes to Ronnie's house after that, and he shows Ronnie's son how to handle a gun. And he says, oh, my friend showed me how to handle a gun when I was 9-10 years old, and so I'm going to show your kid how to handle a gun and drink beer and all that stuff. And obviously Ronnie doesn't like that. She's a pretty good mom, seemingly, and so she doesn't want her kid to be raised that way. Kane's trying to teach this kid how to survive in the hood, and Ronnie doesn't want that. She wants her kid to be able to get out of the hood. So Kane and his friends try to steal a car. Kane goes to prison. When he's in prison, the cops trace his fingerprints back to a beer bottle that was at the armed robbery and double homicide, or double murder. But he knows that they don't have the tape, and so without the tape, they can't convict him. So he gets out of prison, and immediately after he gets out of prison, like the day he gets out of prison, he goes and buys a stolen car. And then jacks somebody else's car for the wheels and the stereo, like the same day. Kane's friend, Mr. Butler, sits down and tries to talk to Kane and tells him, you know, if you don't change something you're doing, if you don't stop doing this stuff, you're going to die, basically. You're going to get killed. And so he gets to thinking about it, seemingly. And later, Kane and his buddy are driving home one night, and the cops stop them and basically beat the crap out of them, arrest them, take them to another part of town, and drop them off in another hood. And it's, you know, the kind of run by more the Mexican gangs. And so the cops are trying to get them to get beaten up more by the Mexican gangs, but it doesn't work out because the Mexican guys are nice and help him out and take him to the hospital. So while Kane is in the hospital, Ronnie comes up to him and says, hey, I'm moving to Atlanta. I got a job in Atlanta. I think you should come with me, try to get out of this situation that we're in. And he decides to go with her to Atlanta. So, as he's kind of on this journey to getting out of the hood that he's in, this girl that he slept with a while ago calls him and says, hey, I'm pregnant and it's your kid. I didn't sleep with anybody else. It's your kid. And he says, it's not my kid. I don't want anything to do with this, and leave me alone, and hangs up the phone. So, basically, the last 30 minutes of the movie, he's trying to get out of the hood. He's trying to get out of this life, cut ties, and he's done with it all. He basically plans on moving on. But he gets confronted by the girl who's pregnant that has his kid. Her cousin goes and confronts Kane and says, hey, I don't like you trying to leave my cousin. Like, this is your kid. You need to be a man and take responsibility. And he's like, no, I don't, and beats the crap out of him. Kane beats the crap out of the cousin. Also, during this time, the cops have the tape of the murders, and they're looking for Kane and O-Dog. And so it's even more reason to get out. They don't really get caught. So the last scene, it seems like, you know, it's over. Yay, he's getting out. It's a happy ending. And they're packing the car to move. They're actually done packing the car to move to Atlanta. And basically all of Kane's mistakes, like, catch up with him. And the cousin of the girl that's pregnant drives by with a bunch of his friends and unloads a bunch of bullets and kill Kane and kill one of Kane's friends. And yeah, that's pretty much it. He gets killed, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's it.
He has a few lines at the end of the movie, which I wish I wrote down, but I didn't, that he says, like, it's just, that's the way it is in the hood. It's crazy like that, you know? And I now realize that I don't want to die. Now I value my life.
I want
now
to
that
live.
I'm dead, I value my life, but obviously it's too late. So, there's quite a few themes that we see throughout the movie. You know, there's murder, there's drug abuse, neglect for your children, which I think is child abuse, and a lot of the stuff they do is basically child abuse. Trauma at a young age, trauma at any age. There's a lot of loyalty. That's a positive theme, I'd say. There's loyalty amongst these friends. Like, they're willing to die for each other.
Yeah.
There's police brutality in the movie. They talk about that a little bit. There's a theme of a lack of responsibility, you know, lack of care or respect for life. And then I guess my last theme is avoiding consequences. They don't want to, you know, like with the kid, he got the girl pregnant and he basically just doesn't care and tries to avoid that consequence.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have any more thoughts? Now that I kind of ran it down, I can ask you.
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah.
you think again?
The parts that really stuck out to me were when I think it was after when Kane is talking to when he and O-Dog go to Kane's grandparents' house, and after that they're literally walking outside, and then there's a whole scene of do you even care if you die? And they're like, I don't know, I don't care if I die. And like, as the days went by and I was thinking about it after I watched the movie, it reminded me of most of the philosophers that I've had to study for like philosophy classes and stuff, and most of their theories were like the way humans live and morality and everything is basically like, if you don't hurt me, I won't hurt you, so that's how we survive, kind of thing. It's kind of like, if you have your own moral judgment, you can live however you want regardless of people. And I think that's really shown when they're gonna go to the neighborhood that the guys that killed Kane's friend, and they're gonna go go to his neighborhood and kill him and stuff. And Kane's biggest reason of why he doesn't want to kill someone is because he's like, what if there's children there? What if there are kids over there? Like, I don't want to shoot a kid. Like, I don't want to get a kid, caught in the crossfire. And O-Dog, like, throughout the entire movie, I was like, how is he real? Like, how can he sit down and think, I really don't care who dies. I don't care what happens. I don't care how horrible this is. I'm going to keep on keeping on at what I'm doing. I'm going to hurt whoever I want. Yeah. And there's no sort of, like, it's like he has no soul. It's like he doesn't care. And he continues to watch the tapes. And it's like a competition for him. It's like he watches it and he's like, oh, look, I look at that. Look at what I did over there. That's so cool. I'm like, you're taking a whole life. Like, those are people who had families and stories. And there's so many possibilities that they couldn't hold on to because someone thought that they weren't worth it because it didn't fit his worldview and it didn't fit his goal, if that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, like, and even when they were in the car, they were going to that neighborhood to go kill that guy, and Kane is like, I don't want to kill a kid, and O-Dog is like, it doesn't matter, they hurt one of you, so you have to hurt one of them, and it doesn't matter who you hurt. Yeah. I was like, they don't care. Like, they do not care. Like, anyone could die, and it would be like another day.
Yeah. I was thinking with O-Dog specifically at the beginning of the movie when he's kind of introducing his friends at the house party, he says, O-Dog is the menace to society. O-Dog is, you remember that? He's a
true menace, yeah.
He says he's the guy that society hates.
Right,
because he doesn't conform to anything, and it's like, it's pretty disgusting. Like, he has no remorse, he has no care. Like, he just does whatever he feels like. And so I think that's why the movie's called Menace to Society. Like, it's, they don't care about any society as a whole. They don't care about anyone else. So, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, I guess they're a menace to the American society, but they kind of have their own society. They have their own social norms within their, culture, I guess, with their little group. And I think it's something that's definitely been kind of blown up in the last few years. In the 90s and the late 80s, like, it was huge. Yeah. That's like when this movie was going on, like the gang violence, gang wars, like all that stuff was pretty big, and I think it may be coming back a little bit, or the remnants of that or whatever. Yeah. Like, I don't know, I guess we can talk about that. Like, this culture of violence and guns, drugs, all that basically raised Kane. That's what I noticed. I don't know if you saw that. Like, his parents didn't raise him. No. They didn't teach him anything. Like, public school barely taught him anything. As bad as that is, like, he was raised by his friends. He was raised by his trauma. And so that's what basically ended up creating him and O-Dog. Like, they just conform to,
right.
I guess, the culture, you know? So, and I think it's an issue.
A big one.
An issue.
Giant,
because, you know, What do you think about that?
I think that, yes, it is an issue, and I'm going to say some things that I don't even have the solution to, but it's what would make sense. It's like, instead of starting with those kids or people who eventually grow up with the guns and the trauma, and they are the ones carrying it out, you can see that it's a generational thing. It's people who are teaching each other. And another fascinating thing in the entire movie was that you saw no other older man in the movie that was like at a father age, like, not that's, it's subjective, but was at an age that was mature and had a different worldview, something that was other than gangs and violence and all these. Like, there were only two of those characters. It was the teacher and it was Kane's grandfather. The rest of them were either on the streets, or they were in jail, or they were dead. And those were the only three options that there were. So you really have children raising children, and looking at their past experiences that they've only seen from their fathers, who were not any good influences, but who did they learn it from? They learned it from their dads, who learned it from their dads, who learned it from their dads. And it goes all the way back, and it goes back and back and back. And so in order to start at that root issue of how do we stop these kinds of people, it's like, well, how do we help the people who are raising them? Because if you don't have somebody who has a good foundation, who has somewhere where they're going to start and they know who they are and they have like a sturdy foundation, you're not going to get anything that's good. Like, yes, it is normal for all of us to have some sort of trauma or something go wrong in our life, because we are sinners, and that's just the world that we live in. But there are ways to minimize it, and the way that the movie showed that was Kane's life and O-Dog's life, that was an extreme, like, that's a case-by-case study, and we don't need to go to a place like Kane's story in order to recognize that this is, like, this kind of brokenness is everywhere. Like, it's absolutely everywhere. But in order to, you know, fix that, you have to fix the people who are raising them. You have to fix the source, because if you don't start at the source, the branches, everything going out is not going to be good. So I think in you know, that kind of culture, you end up either, it is a case by case, it's not across the board, but you end up with either a dad that's a drug dealer, or you end up with no dad, right? And we know that dads are an important influence, like, not only important, they're essential, you know. I read a study that, let's see if I can quote this correctly. Basically, the study said that single mothers raising children is bad. You know, they end up in prison. I can't remember the percentage, but a lot of them end up in prison, more than should. But when a single father raises children, you know, they end up in prison less. Right. And so fathers are an even more important influence, you know. Right. Not that mothers aren't. That's not what I'm saying. You're important. But there's a issue with not having fathers and or having bad fathers. Right. You know? With Kane, like, his mom was a drug addict. Like, so you end up with a drug dealing dad and a drug addict mom, or no dad and a drug addict. Like, it's just a big societal issue, because you know, dads, they don't want to take responsibility. They don't care about their kids, and or they're dead, or they're in prison. Right. So these kids end up being raised by their older friends, or by a culture, or by, nowadays it's what you see on your phone, and it's just like, it's just a cycle that continues, you know? Yeah. And so is there a solution? I'll ask you that. I know what my thoughts are on it. Like, is there a solution? I think that there's a solution. I think that there's a fantastic solution. Why don't I ask you this? Like, systemically, do you think there's a solution? Like, governmentally? Because the solution in the past years within ghettos
I want to avoid, saying black culture and stuff like that, because it's not just black culture.
Mm-hmm.
It is a big thing.
It is.
There is a black culture that kind of has some negative things, but I don't think that it's just that.
Right.
I think it's ghettos in America, and across the world. But you end up with these issues, and so in the past, systemically, you end up just pouring money into the schools, pouring money into welfare, trying to support these people. Is that the solution?
No, because literally the movie starts out with the Watts riots, which happened in the 1970s. Yeah. It literally shows like news footage of police officers, like the government literally bringing in police officers to try and stop what they thought was a problem, which no doubt I'm sure was a problem. But what did that do? It literally kicked off the reason why Menace to Society was a movie. Like, it literally showed, all right, you are going to arrest all of these fathers or men that were in the home trying to be fathers. You arrest all of them, and then you put them in prison. And once you put them in prison, who is going to raise these kids? Now you have single mothers that are trying to raise these kids. So not only they were trying to solve a problem that furthered a problem and made it worse. And now how do we fix this problem? Whenever governments try to get into things, sometimes it's good and sometimes not good. And there's multiple times where it is not good. Yeah. Or there are people who
more often than not.
Yeah, more often than not. It's just not good. And there are people in power who don't have, I don't want to say common sense. They have common sense, but it's not like, it's hard for you to try and fix a problem if you're not living in that situation, because you can't forget you're dealing with people, like you're dealing with complex human beings, and if you don't go by case by case and you try to generalize an entire problem and try to put one solution towards it, you're gonna get what this movie was literally portraying, because that's what the government did. They brought in all these SWAT teams, they brought in police officers, and they made a problem worse. They didn't try to take it.
Yeah.
They didn't treat it with care and sensitivity and knowing. No one wants to be in the position that, like, I can assure you that everyone in that movie did not want to be in that position. Like, it's no one's first instinct to be like, I want to go into drugs and kill people. Like, no one who is born, you can't look at a child and say that.
I think that's the issue, though, is that that's what I kind of saw in Kane, is that he thought it was cool. Yeah. That's what he said at the end of the movie. He's like, I thought that doing all this stuff was cool.
Right.
And so you end up getting this backward thinking of wanting to actually do those things, just kind of as a counterpoint. Like,
right.
I guess they do want to do those things.
Right. It's kind of like a survival thing.
Because they were raised to do that.
That's
they have
literally
to do it,
their world.
And then they get approval and they get encouragement from their friends. Like, you see them showing all the people the tape, and they're like, oh, it's so cool, it's so great.
Right. And that's like a mental health issue. Like, that's not a sane thing to do, to look at killing people and think that that's a cool thing. Yeah. Like, that's not right. That's not normal.
Yeah.
There's something incredibly wrong that has happened.
So, you kind of mentioned this earlier, like, the police come in and they arrest all the fathers and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's really difficult, because it's the government's job to do that, to go and arrest people that are breaking the law.
Right, that is true.
And there's a lot of people that break the law.
Yeah.
And so the government, they got to go and arrest those people,
right.
But then, I don't know, you end up with this, like, deficit of fathers.
Right.
And so it's...
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, is there even a...
Yeah, it's like...
It's just, like, is there a fix for
There's no balance.
Because can't just leave... You can't just say, like, there's no consequences for you breaking the law.
Yeah. But it's like, how do you sort of balance it out? Because, you've arrested these people who've broken the law, but now you've left a lot of potential for the law being broken again.
Yeah. And I've read Yeah, that's true. And I've read stuff from the 1970s and stuff when they made, like, this is just one example, you know, cocaine is basically the more expensive version of crack, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And crack is the cheaper version of cocaine.
Yeah.
And so you end up, what they did was made crack.
Cocaine.
No, they. No. They made the penalty for crack possession higher.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Than cocaine.
Right.
Right? Which doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so you have all these people that are serving years and years and years for crack.
Yeah.
You know, but then you have these people that are rich people
right.
that have cocaine that are only serving so much.
Absolutely.
And so I think there is systemic.
That is very systemic.
Racism, basically, because you know that if you're going to target this poverty area and then it's 95% black, like, you know, it's. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's obviously racist. So.
Right, I agree.
We're rolling.
Okay, where were we?
Systemic
racism.
Solutions.
Okay, sure, solutions,
yeah. So most of the solutions that they've come up with are not solutions at all.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is very controversial, but I think welfare should basically be eliminated. You know? It upholds people that don't need it, you know? Yeah. Well, I guess not completely eliminated. Let me say that. Like, I think there are people that need it.
Yes.
You know?
I agree.
But not a lot.
Yeah, it's not the majority that are on it.
There's a lot of people that are on it that end up using all the money for drugs and stuff like that. And so one of the solutions could be trying to eliminate that.
Right.
Because it also puts all of the poverty into one area.
Yeah.
You know, when you have, like in Chicago, you know, they have sections of the city that are just Section 8. They're solely, you know, welfare buildings.
Yeah.
It's like apartment building after. Have you seen the pictures? Like, it's like just building after building, it's 10 stories tall, just people. And basically the cops don't go there, and there's no businesses that can thrive there, and it's just like, it's bad.
Yeah.
And I think that welfare contributed to that a lot. And so I think you could maybe get rid of some of that. It would leave a lot of people high and dry, though.
It would. The people that actually need it.
Yeah. Well, and the people that are using it that don't have another job.
Well, it would force them to go get a job.
Right. One of the other issues that I've, just to kind of go down this rabbit trail, like, say you're on welfare and you're using it and you have 3 kids, like, you're forced to go get a job. And you potentially could get a job, but you're also addicted to meth, which is, in reference my past video, it's extremely difficult to get off of meth, like nearly impossible. And you can't, like, if you're required to do a drug test, you're going to fail. So you can't get a job basically anywhere. Yeah. There's places that won't test you, but those don't pay high enough to take care of 3 kids. So it's just another issue. Like, it's just issue after issue building on each other. And I think the root of it all is a cultural, social issue within the ghettos, within the, you know, low-income areas. Like, there's a cultural thing of thinking that drugs are cool, murdering is cool, not being a dad is cool, like, you know, sleeping around is cool, stealing, all that stuff is cool. And you end up teaching the kids end up seeing worse and worse stuff, and it just gets worse as people, you know, lose their sense of conscience, you know. So I guess, is there a fix? Can you fix a society? Like, can you fix a culture?
Oh my gosh.
What are your thoughts on that?
Fix a whole people. That's unfortunately, I would say that is nearly, like, impossible for it to like, sure, you might have a couple people where you're successful and where you get, growth in.
A movement or something
But to
that.
change a whole culture that has been thriving, like, I mean thriving, for decades.
Yeah.
Since
the 80s.
Since the 80s, maybe even 60s or 70s, that's going to be hard. Because that is, like, a culture that people grow up in, that they are, in... It's just like their world. It's literally their worldview. Like, we have a worldview, and it's impossible for us to see anything out of that because that is truth in our heads.
Yeah.
But to go there and to literally shake their worlds and to tell them that they're wrong and we have a fix for them, it's going to be hard. Like, you're going to have to do some deep work. And I don't think you can just do that on, like, a human level. Here's how we're going to do this, because that's not possible, or it's not even long term, I would say.
So, fixing a whole culture. Yeah. How do you don't know how to do that?
You can't.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, people try to make laws to fix a culture, but, like, it's not like you can be like, you have to be a dad or you're going to go to prison or something. Because then you just end up, like, the more laws you create, the more people you end up putting in prison. You know? Right. Not that I'm advocating for getting rid of laws. Because there are people that say that. Get rid of the laws and you'll take people out of prison.
No.
Not really the solution, but... like... actual reality trying to fix that, I don't know if you can. I don't think you can. Like, there's people that create movements that try to create programs, blah blah blah, but it's like, it's not gonna, you can't fix the whole thing. Like, the only thing that I really think is gonna fix it is a revival.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
People turning to Christ and realizing their guilt and their sin and realizing how deep they are in their sin, and turning to Christ. And, that's, maybe it wouldn't have saved Cain's life in the movie, but it would have saved his eternal life. Like, every time I watch these movies, like, you live this whole horrible, like, painful life, and then you die, and you just end up going to hell. Yeah. Like, you have nothing to look forward to.
Like, that sucks.
Because he basically, and the whole movie, people ask him these, like, philosophical questions and stuff like that, and he just doesn't care. He doesn't even think about it. It's like, you should care what happens when you die.
I mean, he doesn't even care about the bare minimum.
He doesn't even care about what happens here. That's my solution. I
second that solution. I think it's a good one.
And there's not really just a big red button to push, and like, it creates a revival, but I think that there's things that we can do to try to help people, but I guess we're just talking about an issue that is unsolvable.
Well, it's... In our human minds, in our reality, it seems unsolvable because it's a large issue. Like, you have different factors, different people and their stories and how they got to that part. And so it's going to be hard to touch base with every single one of the millions of people that are in this situation. Yeah. You can't change all of them. But, and in our humanness, we cannot change all of them. There's only, one thing that is a long-term eternal solution, which is, realizing that you're a sinner and that you need a savior, and that you've offended him, that he needed to die on a cross for you. And once you get that truth, everything, it just rolls over. It just spills over into everything else in your life. Because now you're like, I have a purpose. Like, I know why I am here now. Like, I know whom I worship. I know why I'm doing what I do. So. Yeah.
Well, I guess now that we've come to a solution.
Yeah, that's the only solution. Well, I mean, even before we wrap it up, there was one other part in the movie that it was more of two scenes that I saw, and I was like, yeah, I understand why Cain didn't really think that, because his grandfather is seen as like a religious man, right?
Yeah.
But he's never, like, the only consequence that he gives Cain is kicking him out.
Yeah.
But even, like, you know, his grandparents love him and everything, but it wasn't, you know, monumental enough to want Cain to change his life. Whereas when the teacher talked to him and got to know Cain on that personal level, on that level that is, you know, I care about you as an individual, and I just don't care about you doing the right thing, but why are you doing the right thing?
Yeah.
That made Cain change his mind at the end and decide, oh, I want a purpose.
Yeah.
Because he had someone actually caring about his life and actually asking him, like, questions that I feel like some Christians just forget to even think about. Like, yeah, you can tell them all these things that, you know, you're going to hell because you're a sinner. None of that is, you know, false. You know, it's true what they're saying. Like, if you are a sinner, you are destined for hell. Like, I'm sorry, but that's the whole thing. But if you focus on that part the entire time and you miss the bigger picture, what it's all about, and what Christ tells us to do now that now that he's opened that door for us, now that that whole thing has happened, if you miss that, it's going to be hard to get to other people. It's going to be hard to reach other people because, once again, you're dealing with people. So I just thought that was interesting that the teacher who was not a believer could get to Cain.
Yeah. I think that is basically the way to get to people is talk to them on a personal level. And again, like, you can't do that with everyone.
No.
You know? But that's what's so great about the Lord is Jesus is you have a personal relationship with him. You know, it's not like a lot of people, and I think this is how it was presented in the movie and how it's often presented in movies, is that religion is just like a general, like, cut and dry, like, you know, even like Christianity, it's just like, you're going to hell unless you know, stop having sex and don't kill people and like all that stuff. And that's just, it's true. Those things are true, but that's not what it's all about. Like, you know, we care about your soul, and that's what we want for you. And that's what I care about for him. Like, you've done all these things, like, the Lord will still forgive you, even if you've done all these things, like, without remorse, basically. And he will still have a relationship with you. Like, that's what really drives you to want to obey him and do what he says is because you love him personally. Because
he loved you first.
Yeah. In the movie, like, it just wasn't presented that way. I think that's what saves people is salvation.
That's it. That's the only solution.
What can save a culture or a country or anything is salvation. Do I think it's going to happen? Not really. I don't think so. And it's not even up to me, even if it was possible. But yeah, I guess that's my solution. There's a lot of issues that are basically unsolvable on our level. And it sucks because there's, like, I have on my Twitter, like, I follow police departments, and, like, every day I get notifications of, like, shooting off of this street and like triple murder, like stuff like that, and it's crazy. Like, you think it's like out there. It's like, you know, oh, Chicago, you know, Compton or whatever. Like, I think it's getting to be everywhere, like, this kind of issues, and I think it's infiltrating pretty much everyone's lives now that the news is so prominent in today's age. So I think the only thing we can really do is try to save people, try to help bring them to Christ.
That's it.
That's it. Thank you for joining us on this sad, depressing, non-conclusive episode of the Andyland mid-afternoon show. How to overcome evil.
Dude, put the book down.
How to overcome evil. prpbooks.com.
FYI, I don't think he's read that book.
I don't think so. I do not think so.
I wrote it, so.
You wrote it now.
That's probably plagiarism if I say that, huh? Join me next time. I believe that I'll be doing this again, hopefully, another episode in the future. Peace.
Goodbye.